Welcome to this next podcast on people pleasing. Now, this is one of my top three favorite topics to talk about in my coaching business, both with corporate clients and non corporate entrepreneurs. I find people pleasing is one of the biggest problems women face. And people pleasing is the fastest way for us to be taken off our purpose. It's the fastest way to start feeling really disengaged by life. It's one of the fastest ways to over time bring on depression and anxiety. Basically, because we are abandoning ourselves. And when we abandon ourselves, we're abandoning our vision, our goals, our dreams, our hopes. Hello and welcome to Brave Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila V. This podcast is all about helping you get brave, courageous, and confident to make real and lasting changes in your life so that, yes, you are living your truth. I'm here to help you navigate your spiritual awakening, to guide you how to heal from trauma in your past, and to manifest the life that you know you deserve. You are powerful, you are divine, and I'm here to remind you that you can achieve anything that you want in your life. I am a transformation coach, a spiritual teacher, a business mentor, a speaker, an author, and a badass brave woman. And I am obsessed with women bravely and courageously showing up to live their life with no apologies. And I cannot wait to get into today's episode with you. Welcome to this next podcast on people pleasing. Now, this is one of my top three favorite topics to talk about in my coaching business, both with corporate clients and non corporate entrepreneurs. I find people pleasing is one of the biggest problems women face. And people pleasing is the fastest way for us to be taken off our purpose. It's the fastest way to start feeling really disengaged by life. It's one of the fastest ways to over time bring on depression and anxiety. Basically, because we are abandoning ourselves. And when we abandon ourselves, we're abandoning our vision, our goals, our dreams, our hopes. And initially, it feels good. We get a bit of a dopamine hit. We feel like we're the caretaker. We might even have martyrdom syndrome, where we think, okay, I'm the person the family needs. I'm the person the company needs. I get things done because I say yes to everyone. But over time, resentment builds up. And I tell you, this is the common ways I see people pleasing manifesting with the clients I work with. So, one of the first ways is women in senior management positions, any levels of management, to be honest, there's something going wrong in their team. There's something they're disappointed in. There's conflict, or there's something that they need to speak up about. And speaking up to their boss is the most frightening, terrifying thing to do. It's they come to me and they say, I don't know how to do it. I'm scared I'm gonna, lose my job. We catastrophize when we're such big people pleasers. I don't even know where to start with the bringing up the conversation. I'm really not happy, but I will speak up in my next meeting. And then when I check in with them, it hasn't happened. So there's a real procrastination around putting in place boundaries. So people pleasing is very much not speaking up when you're unhappy at work, not speaking up when you're not feeling heard in a meeting, not speaking up about promotions or pay rises. The list goes on and on. But the people pleasing is sometimes saying yes to everything. That can be how it manifests, or it's an inability to say no when a boundary has been breached. It manifests in two ways. So I'll say that again. It's saying yes to everything. I was that. I was a quintessential people pleaser. I liked being given more and more work, and I would just say yes. And it became a real problem for my own bosses because they knew I did not know how to manage my boundaries. And I've suffered probably burnout 3 times in my career at least. And so the most mature way to behave in a corporate job or as an entrepreneur is to know how to manage your own energies, right? So that's the first way in the corporate job, people pleasing. It's saying yes to everything, or when something comes up and we need to speak up and say, no, we don't know how to. Okay. It's kind of the same thing. The second way is in relationships, romantic relationships, when you first start out dating. When we first start out dating, that's when our people pleasing really rears its head. That's where we start saying, you love hiking, I love hiking. You love vegan food, I love vegan food, right? So we start just mirroring so much behavior of the person we're with early dating stages that we lose ourselves. I used to do this. And secondly, into a relationship, just to keep it functioning, we say yes, putting the other person's priorities, their values, their requests ahead of our own. And people pleasers, what I've noticed over time is they lose themselves. So when I've broken up with a partner and I've had to reconstruct my life, it's felt so challenging because I did not know who I was anymore. I'd people pleased for so long. I didn't know what kind of food I liked. I didn't know how I wanted to spend my time. I just had said yes to so many decisions. I'd outsourced decision making basically to anyone around me. I was such a people pleaser that when I was single or starting a new job, it was like I did not know how to behave in a way that honored myself, right? So we'll come to that further in about 5-10 minutes in the podcast. But basically, I just want to firstly diagnose how it shows up and basically the cost, because losing yourself is one of the biggest problems of people pleasing. And it may not sound like that big a deal, but over time, that lost feeling, if you let it go for years, 5 years, a decade, we wake up one day and we don't know who we are. We feel lost and confused. We don't know what our purpose is. And it doesn't matter how old you are. When I do my intuitive readings and counseling, there's so many clients that feel lost in their life. And it's because of so much people pleasing and boundary breaches that they've outsourced decision making about their life. That's what people pleasing is. You outsource decision making around big decisions in your life to someone else. It starts with small decisions and it gets bigger and bigger. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about, people pleasing, why does it happen? So we can the first is we can grow up in houses where there's a lot of dysfunction. And I'm going to introduce a concept called parentification. Parentification. Okay, what does parentification mean? It's basically when the role between an adult and the parent and the child is reversed. And it's where a child starts to take care of the adult. Okay. And you might relate to this, you may not. You may relate to a flavor of this. If you can relate to a flavor, it means you may have people pleasing tendencies you may not even be aware of. This is so subconscious and unconscious, and it starts in our childhood. So, parentification is where the child takes on parenting responsibilities and ends up parenting the parent, and the child becomes the parent, and the parent becomes the child. Now, how does this manifest? It manifests when there is a lot of dysfunction in the parent's marriage. And so the child is to step in and either mediate, or I'll speak to women in particular. And I felt like I did this to a certain level growing up. You end up trying to become the good girl because we believe if we're good, then everything will smooth out in the family. There'll be less conflict. Children get in and try and mediate the parents. The biggest thing I think is becoming the good girl, the quiet girl, the obedient girl. So parents could have dysfunction in their marriage. Parents could suffer from depression and anxiety, where we end up checking in with mum and dad and going, "Are you okay?" And if you're very young and we're pre-verbal, or we don't even have the maturity with the language to ask if our parents are okay. Quite often, as children, we're highly sensitive, empathic, you might even say psychic. And we sit and we know the temperature of the household. We know what's going on in the household before anyone even opens their mouth. We know if mum and dad have had an argument. We know if there's potential infidelity. We know if dad or mum are having a financial crisis or a lot of financial worries. And so psychically, empathically, we absorb those emotions and we start to behave in a way to try and control the environment to make things better, Inevitably, a child can never make an adult's problems better. A child can't ever solve an adult's problems. In my NLP and my trauma studies, there's this magical age between about 3 and 7 where all children feel magical and we feel like we have a lot of power and control. The world is magical and we can create. There's a real veil between the make believe and the real that's not real. Like we don't know what's real and what's not real. And it's during that time that children believe that they can make things better, that they can save their parents, that if they're just good, that everything will be okay. And we might even, if we have parents that are divorced, we might even ask ourselves as a child, what could I have done to stop this from happening? That's how black and white a child's mindset is. And because of that, this is the root cause, the genesis of the people-pleasing behavior. We get taught that people-pleasing at this particular point in our life does make things better. It allows us to control the uncomfortable emotions around us. And we start behaving like this as children, and we just perpetuate this behavior into our teenage and adult years. And by the time we hit the workplace in our 20s and 30s and even early 40s for myself, I was such a chronic people pleaser. It was so hard to overcome this. I'm going to speak a bit more about that in a second, but I want to, if you're a people pleaser, I want you just to know it's probably a childhood thing and highly likely, and it's not going to change overnight. However, you can successfully change this pattern through repeated new behaviors and pattern interrupts with the way you think. I have changed my people-pleasing tendencies. It took years. It's the best, deepest, hardest work I've ever done and the most rewarding because it fundamentally changed the direction of my life. I started to feel I was bringing into my life everything I've wanted. I've achieved the success I wanted on my, in my own way with my own vision. And I'm not sold out to the visions of others. So that's one way, is parentification. The other way, we might have had parents who put a lot of pressure on us. They were very high performing parents or had high expectations. So if these parents have very high expectations, we get taught love is conditional. So when love is conditional, when we get taught to please others to receive love, and that is the primary way of receiving love, validation, and affection. Now, when we are taught this behavior from such a young age, it goes all the way through to our corporate careers, entrepreneurship, dating, romance. We get taught everything about me is basically calculated and measured upon what I do for you versus can I just be loved for me? I remember when I had that moment of realizing I am just lovable as I am on my own. It was shocking when I remember my husband said to me early on in our relationship, "You've never been loved like this before." And I said I hadn't. I didn't know I could just be loved for me, or I could just be loved in the messy moments of my life when I was not even not people pleasing. I was acting out. I was, chucking a tantrum. I was in a bad mood. He would still show up with deep love for myself. And I had to have love for myself in that moment. That's how we know we're breaking the patterns, when we can be with the messiness of life. And I'll come to that again in a second. So the two reasons you grew up with, highly immature or non-emotionally regulated parents, they had intergenerational trauma handed to them. They did not know how to handle it and were not aware and handed it to you. The other is very high expectations by parents, high achieving family. And then as a result, we learn I have to please. This is where perfectionism come from. But also I have to learn to please. I have to learn to keep my room clean and do extra chores and constantly being busy. So if you're a woman who's constantly being busy, that's a level of pleasing others. There's a thing in our nervous system that's been trained to constantly be moving because we got trained to do that as children. Now, the other reasons why people pleasing starts in our childhood, or it could be very much ingrained in our belief set, is because we belong to a culture where you need to belong to the group, and if you become quite independent and do what you want, that's shamed and shunned. And I'm speaking more to Southeast Asian type cultures. I'm Sri Lankan, born in Australia. However, I did grow up with Sri Lankan values, and there was very much a dialogue growing up. You can't shame the family, you can't shame, within the culture, or that person did something bad because they went outside of the family. So I find when I coach Southeast Asian people from that, even if they're born in another country, it's very much group think. Think about the collective. And what is that a problem? Well, I wanted to go and do my own thing. I wanted to fearlessly kind of live a different type of life than what was quite normal for traditional Sri Lankan women. We got married early and we kind of had children early, and that wasn't for me. And so I felt torn, and there's a lot of inner conflict when you want to stop people pleasing, yet you feel like you need to. Inner conflict creates a very ruminating mindset. You sit and figure out, how can I do me and belong to the family and please my parents and my family and my culture and everyone around me? There's this constant feeling of choice. When you start to become aware that we are people pleasing, that inner conflict can really rear its head. So culture's a big one. And it may not be Southeast Asia. There are many cultures where the tribe, where group think, where being part of a collective is very important, and obeying the rules of that collective means more than honoring yourself. Like religions have that too. If I ever coach clients that have come from a strong faith where they attended church or any type of religious institution once a week, or there was a lot of indoctrination, anytime they wanted to stray from that, felt very hard. There was a need to please within that organization. Okay. So we've discussed what it really is, how it creates problems in our life. Let's discuss how it manifests as adults. So as adults, we become women and men, but women I'll speak to, who say yes to everything in the corporate world. We don't have boundaries when it comes to working long hours, when it comes to taking on someone else's responsibility. Say someone is ill for a long time. I've had a client have this happen, and they had to take on someone's responsibilities. And there's a real boundary breach with workload, with time, with pay, and people pleasing, because it's formed in our childhood. We people please to control our environment. And you may have heard people pleasing is a form of manipulation. And that can be quite confronting to even hear that. When I first heard that people pleasing is a form of manipulation, I thought, whoa, I'm not manipulating anyone. But when I stopped and I reflected, I thought, I am manipulating everything to control outcomes. So people pleasers can't be in flow state very often. And they're not very good with messiness of life, making mistakes, the discomfort of uncomfortable emotions. Because as children, we experience this uncomfortable emotion so much, or these emotions felt so big for our little minds and our little bodies, that we felt really it felt too much for us as children. So as adults, we still haven't integrated that part of ourselves, that inner child, that 5 or 6-year-old that felt lost, confused, overwhelmed. And there's a little part of us that's still feeling that. And we don't want to tap into that. We don't want to feel those kind of big emotions or feel out of control. So we manipulate. And so people pleasing definitely is a form of manipulation. Now, this is where I talk about brave conversations, because the start of ending people pleasing is to learn how to have a brave conversation. Now, when I coach my clients, and even for myself, I've specifically learned to do this a lot with my family, because I felt for so many years not good enough, or I was letting everyone down, or I wore the tag of the bad child, the bad daughter. And it took me a long time to realize that I had to speak up, and I had to learn how to have a healthy dialogue with my family, with my parents. And the first thing I teach is you have to start, so that there are steps to starting to have a brave conversation. So a brave conversation is learning how to say no. It's learning how to negotiate. So it's never just black or white, yes or no. People pleasing isn't about saying no. It's about engaging in a dialogue which it involves negotiation. It involves conflict management. It involves listening to someone else's reason why they are asking this of us, then processing if and how a boundary violations happened and what we are prepared to move on. Now, the reason why people pleasing is so hard to break, we go into a panic. You see, we don't want to experience any uncomfortable emotions within ourselves or within another person. That's why we don't want to go into the boss and have a difficult conversation about something we're unhappy with at work. We don't want to sit there and experience their irritation or anger, or a bad temper, or words being spoken about us that would make us feel really poorly about ourselves. And but that is the place that we need to start getting comfortable with. We have an illusion that when we start putting in place boundaries and we stop people pleasing, that it's going to be great, that we're going to feel great about it, that the person who we stop, we start putting boundaries in place with is going to enjoy it. They're going to be on board with, what we're requesting. They're going to be in our camp supporting us. No, they won't. It will be just as uncomfortable for them as it will be for us, maybe even more so, because they might be receiving this new information about the fact that you don't want to people please anymore. If you talk to your partner and you raise, hey, look, the share of the household work just doesn't feel equal anymore. They're not going to want to hear that. They are not going to want to hear that. They're not going to want to hear anything where they may feel attacked, they may feel belittled, emotions of shame might come up. And that brings up their childhood wounds of when they felt belittled, attacked, or in shame, right? So it's a dance. And the first step is starting. So there's a great quote that says, start even if your voice quivers. Just start. So there needs to be some plan around having this brave conversation, as I call it. There needs to be a little bit of reflection, even journal writing, even writing the conversation down. When I've had clients that have been terrified of having a conversation with a partner or a boss, I'd say to them, let's write down the script, okay? Because if it feels that overwhelming, then we need to start chunking it down, dismantling it to the point that overwhelm is really diminished. It's never going to go away, this fear, but you're going to bring it down to a point where you think, okay, I can do this. I feel prepared to. So start even if your voice quivers. The second thing is sit in the discomfort that the person receiving the information may not like it. They may feel attacked, even if you're using the most gentle, open kind of body language and calm voice. They may not like what they're hearing because fundamentally we're pushing back on a boundary. We could be just saying a simple no, or we could be saying, hey, the behavior that I'm seeing, I'm not happy with. It's going to make them look within and do the work, right? And no one really likes being forced to do the work, right? That tends to be how the work comes about, right? The inner work is someone calls you on your stuff. So we've got to build emotional resilience in the face of potential disapproval. I'll say that again. We have to build emotional resilience in the face of potential disapproval. Why is this hard? Because we never learned that skill as children. We never got to learn to speak to an authority or an adult without a repercussion of maybe violence, of being hit, of being told off, of being punished, of being silenced, of having something removed, like a toy or something withdrawn that we wanted. So we stopped feeling safe very quickly as children. And so right now, we're scared of having all of that come up as adults. And so we've got to sit and prepare ourselves for the disapproval and have resilience around that. I had a couple of clients recently that engaged in a brave conversation, and when they came back, they were quite upset because they didn't like how they felt and they didn't like how the other person felt. And I said to them, they're doing absolutely brilliantly. This is exactly what a brave conversation looks like. I find that we bring up all the emotions and we stir the pot. It is uncomfortable for everyone and it does settle because on some level, all the work starts to begin in their camp and in our camp. we start getting clear on what we want and how we want to live our life. And they start getting clear on what actions they can take to help us do that because we've made a clear request. But the process of getting there is going to be damn messy. It's going to be uncomfortable. Fear is going to come up. Shame is going to come up with us, with them. Potential anger will come up as a way to try and push down the emotions of shame and guilt. So we get angry as a way to not deal with the fact that we don't feel great about ourselves. And so this process is entirely messy, especially early on. Once we stop being people pleasers, our intuition starts to kick in way more. We start to learn the best times to have these conversations, the best places. The way we navigate it becomes way more easier. The words we use. We start becoming, I think, a lot more elegant, compassionate, highly emotionally intelligent and spiritually intelligent when we become masters of boundary placing and when we stop people pleasing. But the early steps of the process, we feel quite the opposite. We feel incompetent. We feel like we're causing a whole lot of chaos in our life unnecessarily. And we feel like things are breaking around us. Okay. And so if you're feeling that way, you're kind of doing it right. I want to validate your people pleasing is working. Now, the next step is accepting the reality. Just because we put in place a boundary doesn't mean they need to say yes. Just because we ask for a pay rise doesn't mean we're going to get it. Just because we want some more interesting work doesn't mean our job description changes. Just because we want our partner to change the share of household work doesn't mean they're going to do it, right? So there's a reality. It's a fantasy reality model. It's a great psychological model where we create a fantasy that we put in place a boundary and everything's going to turn out exactly as we want. And the reality is that person's also got boundaries. And this is where people pleasing, we need to move from people pleasing to understanding healthy conflict resolution, which isn't a one-way conversation. It's a dance and it's a two-way conversation that goes over an extended period of time. Now, why are we so bad at conflict resolution, right? And that's why people pleasing is so easy to do because there's very little conflict. Someone asks us something, we don't even think about the boundary breach and we say yes, no conflict. Now, conflict resolution might be very challenging for you. It was challenging for me because you may not have had healthy conflict modeled between your parents growing up. Now, would have been your parents because that's the first way we see people interact. That's the first model of safe interaction. So we can see it around us, definitely growing up, but it's always going to come from parents primarily or the two primary caretakers in a home. And you might have seen your parents argue. You might have seen the silent treatment. You might have seen mum or dad have a fight and one leaves the house. You might have seen days of silence and then suddenly the silence breaks. Or you might have seen a lot of violence. You might have seen a lot of name calling. You might have seen mum or father losing their cool, breaking things, and the other parent fawning, people pleasing, right? Now, if you didn't see healthy conflict role modeled, well, we will run for the hills if conflict's there. So people pleasing is more than just one of us saying no and the other saying yes, okay? It's about realizing that there's a goal that the person is coming to us and they want to achieve, or we have a goal that we want to achieve. And it has to be a negotiation to get there. So negotiation skills will help move you away from people pleasing. But we need to realize that we need to engage in a negotiation where there's healthy language, there is compassion, there's an ability to listen to what is the other person trying to achieve. We need to engage our executive thinking center, which is the front part of our brain, to help solve the problem. A very basic example. If a boss asks us at 2:00 in the afternoon, hey, I need you to work late. I need you to stay back and work late. And we're there thinking, I've got a yoga class at 6:00. I need to leave on time at 5:30, right? Instead of just saying a hard no, we need to learn to engage our executive thinking and compassionately ask them, why do you want me to work late? What is so important? They calmly explain what their need is. We calmly break down maybe the task into micro tasks. or we find a new way to extend the deadline, or we find other ways to resource it and bring other people in. It's not just a one way, I'm asking you for this task and you're the point of solution. We need to engage in a healthy dialogue that involves problem solving. So people pleasers aren't great problem solvers. They just want to say yes and go off and work on the task. And that's where burnout occurs. But when you start breaking people pleasing, you get in the person's world and you say, okay, why do you want that? Why are you asking me this? That's making me a little uncomfortable. And if you've never had parents show you how to have a calm, rational conversation where they're emotionally intelligent, you're going to have to learn this skill as an adult. Okay. Now, the last point I want to make is the reason why people pleasing is so endemic in people's lives is because they have no vision of their own. They have no purpose of their own. And so they outsource so much decision making around their life to other people. So a lot of the time when I first start working with clients, I say to them, what do you want to achieve in your life? And that feels like a big existential question, right? But it really isn't. It's a question we all need to consider quite often. And we break it down into all the parts of our life. What do you want to achieve in your career, purpose, work? What do you want to achieve in terms of your social circles? Who do you want to bring in as friends? Who do you want to love more? What does your health and fitness goals look like? What do your finance goals look like? Now, when you get a really clear picture, blueprint, roadmap about what your vision is 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, anything that takes you off that, you will start picking up quickly. But if you don't have a vision and someone asks you to do something, to stay back late, you'll say yes immediately. If someone breaches any kind of boundary with you because you're not wedded to your own vision, you may not be clear on your own vision, you don't even believe in your own vision, you'll follow someone else's vision. And that's one of the most chronic ways people pleasing can happen in a way that's quite accidental and unconscious. For years, I wasn't really clear on whether I wanted to be married or not, or even have children. I just kind of thought maybe, the career is more important and it will happen, this relationship thing, this marriage and kids. And because I wasn't clear, anytime someone asked me something that took me away from relationships, fertility, having a child, it happened really quickly because I wasn't really committed to the vision of creating a family, creating a partnership with somebody. And so I worked long and exhausting hours, too exhausted to date on the weekend, and the years tick by. And so that's what I mean by you have to have a vision and then with a coach or a mentor, chunk it down to what are the steps that are going to take you there. So if anyone then starts taking you off your path, like I said, you aren't going to people please for them. You're going to think, how is this taking me off my vision? And the people pleasing will stop quite quickly, or you'll feel incongruent in your body. You'll feel actually a little off. You'll start to feel like, you might even manifest illness. Your gut instinct will kick in. Your intuition will be like, screaming at you, no, stop doing this now. Basically, because you've got a clear direction of where you're going. I hope this chat about people pleasing has really helped you. There are some themes I'm going to keep on coming back to because I can't say it enough. I really feel like people pleasing, perfectionism, boundaries are all kind of in the same pot. Yet the more we discuss it and reflect in our lives where it's occurring, the more you can tackle it. You start addressing where you're abandoning yourself in your life. When you start really seeing it and you work with a coach or a mentor to help you stop doing this, your life will start to change. I know mine did. I've achieved extraordinary things when I really owned up that I was behaving in a way that was so inauthentic to who I was. And from that point, I started to go, what do I want? And initially it felt so damn selfish. It felt like, gosh, can I disappoint people like this? Feel so uncomfortable being so selfish and self-centered. Can I really take care of myself and not other people? But when I started to do this, the magic started to happen in my life. And I'm hoping the magic starts to happen in your life when you stop people pleasing and you start honoring who you are. Anyway, my name's Sheila V. Please reach out for an intuitive session, check out my programs, read my book, Brave, Courageously Live Your Truth, and I will be back with you with another podcast very soon. Big hugs of love. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. I'm filled with gratitude for you. I honor you for choosing you, your personal growth, and your evolution. Thank you for letting me into your world. It has been a privilege. Now do me one favor, one big thing. Share this podcast with a soul sister or brother who needs to hear this. My mission on planet Earth is to help as many people as possible so we can be bold, be brave, and be courageously ourselves. I'll see you on the next episode.